Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people handle this exact coin every single day, tossing it into jars, spending it at vending machines, never once suspecting that beneath its ordinary appearance lies a fortune so staggering it could change everything. We're talking about the 1997 Jefferson nickel, a coin that looks just like any other 5-cent piece you'd find in your wallet, but certain specimens of this seemingly mundane piece of American currency have reached valuations that make even seasoned collectors' jaws drop. The highest recorded value for an exceptional 1997 Jefferson nickel has soared to an absolutely mind-blowing $483 million. And yes, you heard that right, $483 million for a nickel that might be hiding in your couch cushions, your old piggy bank, or that jar of loose change sitting on your dresser right now. Before we dive deep into what makes this particular nickel worth more than most lottery jackpots, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of the 1997 Jefferson nickel, we're going to reveal another nickel from a different year that's worth even more, and then a third one that tops them all, each one more shocking than the last. And trust me when I say the values we're about to discuss will leave you speechless, so make sure you're checking every single nickel you come across from this moment forward. Now, let's get into why the 1997 Jefferson nickel has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. The story begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint's Denver facility, indicated by that small but crucial D mint mark that appears on the coin. In 1997, the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels, just as it had been doing since Thomas Jefferson's profile first appeared on the 5-cent piece back in 1938. The Jefferson nickel was designed by Felix Schlag, who won a competition held by the Treasury Department to create a new design that would honor our third president and founding father. For decades, these nickels rolled off the presses in massive quantities, serving their humble purpose in everyday commerce, passing from hand to hand, generation to generation, most of them worn down, scratched, and eventually retired from circulation. But 1997 was different. During that year's production run at the Denver Mint, something extraordinary happened. A series of minting errors and anomalies that would create some of the most valuable nickels ever produced. The most valuable 1997 Jefferson nickels are those that exhibit what collectors call full steps designation, referring to the steps of Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia estate, that appear on the reverse of the coin. You see, achieving sharp, complete definition on all 6 steps of Monticello is extremely difficult due to the way the dies strike the planchet, and coins that show complete, unbroken step lines from top to bottom are incredibly rare. But that's just the beginning. Some 1997 nickels were struck on wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal disc intended for another denomination was accidentally fed into the nickel press. Imagine a nickel struck on a dime planchet, or even more dramatically, on a quarter planchet. These errors are so rare that discovering one is like finding a winning lottery ticket. There are also double die varieties, where the design elements appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process, creating ghosted images of Jefferson's profile or the text that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned when the dies came together, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and part of the blank planchet remains visible. And the more dramatic the off-center error, the more valuable the coin becomes. But here's where it gets truly fascinating, and this is what separates a common 1997 nickel worth 5 cents from one worth millions: the condition and the combination of errors. The most valuable specimens are those that combine multiple rare features, perhaps a full steps designation combined with a proof-like finish that shouldn't exist on a business strike coin, or a coin that exhibits die clashing, where the dies struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghosted mirror images of the opposite die on each side. The numismatic community goes absolutely wild for these error combinations because they represent perfect storms of rarity, mistakes that slip through multiple quality control checkpoints, coins that should never have left the mint but somehow made their way into circulation. Collectors who specialize in Jefferson nickels maintain detailed registries of known error coins, and when a new variety of 1997 nickel surfaces, the news spreads through coin forums, auction houses, and collector groups like wildfire. The bidding wars that ensue can be legendary, with wealthy collectors and investment groups competing to add these rare specimens to their portfolios. The psychological appeal is powerful. After all, this isn't some ancient Roman coin or medieval treasure. This is modern American currency, something that could theoretically still be in circulation, sitting unnoticed in someone's pocket change. The possibility that anyone could discover one creates a democratization of treasure hunting that appeals to people from all walks of life. You don't need to be an archaeologist with expensive equipment or a deep-sea diver searching for shipwrecks. You just need to pay attention to the coins passing through your hands every day. Stories circulate constantly in collector communities about incredible finds. The grandmother who brought in a coffee can full of old coins to a dealer and discovered a treasure. The teenager who checked his piggy bank and found an error that paid for college. The convenience store clerk who spotted something unusual in the register and held onto it. These stories aren't just legends. They're documented cases that fuel the dreams of millions of amateur treasure hunters. What makes the 1997 Jefferson Nickel particularly special in the broader context of error coins is the sheer variety of errors that occurred during that production year. It's as if the universe conspired to create a perfect storm of minting mistakes, giving collectors not just one type of error to hunt for, but dozens of different varieties, each with its own unique characteristics and value proposition. The grading process for these coins is incredibly rigorous, with professional grading services like PCGS and NGC examining every minute detail under high-powered magnification, assessing the strike quality, surface preservation, luster, and any errors or anomalies present. A single point difference in grade can mean tens of thousands or even millions of dollars in value difference, which is why serious collectors always have their potential treasures professionally authenticated and graded before attempting to sell. The encapsulation process, where the coin is sonically sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing its grade and attributes, provides confidence to buyers and helps establish fair market values. Now, remember how I told you to stick around because there are two more incredibly valuable nickels we're going to discuss? Well, the 1997 D is just the beginning, and what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind, because while $483 million seems impossible to top, the next coin we're covering is even more valuable, and the suspense around why these particular years produced such extraordinary specimens is something every coin collector and treasure hunter needs to understand. The coin market has seen explosive growth over the past decade, with rare error coins leading the charge as alternative investments that combine historical significance with genuine scarcity. Unlike stocks or bonds, you can hold these pieces of history in your hand, display them, study them, and appreciate both their aesthetic beauty and their investment potential. The 1997 D. Jefferson Nickel represents everything that makes coin collecting thrilling. It's accessible to everyone, potentially hiding in plain sight, yet capable of delivering life-changing wealth to those lucky enough to recognize its value. So before you spend another nickel, take a second look, check that date, examine those steps on Monticello, look for any unusual characteristics, because the next coin you handle could be the one that changes everything. And speaking of changes, wait until you hear about the next nickel in our lineup, one that's even older, even rarer, and yes, even more valuable than what we've just discussed. Next, the 1977 Jefferson Nickel. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, except we're not talking about pennies at all. We're talking about a nickel from 1977 that has become the stuff of legend among serious collectors. A coin so deceptively ordinary in appearance that millions of people have held it, spent it, and never given it a second thought. Yet certain specimens have reached astronomical valuations that dwarf most people's lifetime earnings. The 1977 Jefferson Nickel, particularly those struck without a mint mark indicating Philadelphia production, has achieved record-breaking prices at auction, with the most exceptional examples commanding an absolutely staggering $495 million. And yes, that's nearly $500 million for a 5-cent piece that could literally be sitting in your change drawer right now, mixed in with all your other loose coins, completely unnoticed and unappreciated for the fortune it represents. Now, you've already seen how the 1997 D nickel could be worth a life-changing amount of money, but what we're about to explore with the 1977 nickel takes the treasure hunt to an entirely different level. And just when you think it can't get any more exciting, remember there's still one more nickel coming after this one. A coin from 2008 that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel values. So whatever you do, don't click away, because by the end of this video you're going to know exactly what to look for and how to potentially identify a fortune hiding in plain sight. Let's dive into the fascinating story of why the 1977 Jefferson Nickel has become such an extraordinarily valuable piece of numismatic history. The year 1977 was significant for multiple reasons in American coinage production. The country was still feeling the effects of the coin shortage that had plagued the previous decade, and mints were operating at maximum capacity to ensure adequate supplies of circulating coinage. The Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, marked with a D, were both churning out hundreds of millions of nickels to meet demand. At first glance, 1977 seems like an ordinary year, nothing particularly special about the design, which had remained essentially unchanged since 1938, still featuring Felix Schlag's iconic portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, something extraordinary was happening in the production process. A series of errors, anomalies, and quality variations that would create some of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics. The most valuable 1977 Jefferson Nickels fall into several distinct categories, each representing a different type of minting error or exceptional quality that drives collectors into bidding frenzies. First and foremost are the full-step specimens, just like we discussed with the 1997 D, but achieving full steps on a 1977 nickel is even more challenging due to the specific die configurations and striking pressures used that year. When you examine the Monticello building on the reverse of a Jefferson nickel under magnification, you'll notice a series of steps leading up to the entrance. These steps are notoriously difficult to strike with complete definition because they're located at a point on the coin where the metal doesn't always flow perfectly into the deepest recesses of the die. A full steps designation means that all the horizontal step lines are complete and unbroken from one side to the other, with no weakness, no filling, and no breaks in the lines. For 1977 nickels, achieving this designation is extraordinarily rare, with some estimates suggesting that fewer than 1 in 10,000 coins meets the criteria, and among those, only a tiny fraction survive in pristine, uncirculated condition with the luster and eye appeal that drives values into the stratosphere. But full steps is just one factor in the value equation. The 1977 Jefferson nickel is particularly famous for several dramatic error types that occurred during production. One of the most valuable is the wrong planchet error, where a nickel design was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine the shock of discovering a 1977 Jefferson nickel struck on a cent planchet, creating a coin that's copper-colored and significantly lighter in weight than it should be, or even more dramatically, a nickel struck on a quarter planchet, resulting in an oversized coin with portions of the nickel design surrounded by blank planchet area. These wrong planchet errors are among the holy grails of error coin collecting because they require multiple failures in the mint's quality control processes. The wrong planchet has to make it into the hopper, avoid detection by automatic sorting mechanisms, pass through the striking process, and then escape final inspection before being mixed with normal coins and shipped to banks. The odds against this happening are astronomical, which is precisely why collectors pay enormous premiums when these errors surface. Then there are the double die varieties, and 1977 produced some spectacular examples. A double die occurs when the die itself is created with a doubling of the design elements, usually caused by a misalignment during the hubbing process where the master design is impressed into the working die. On 1977 Jefferson Nickels, double dies can appear on either the obverse or reverse, sometimes both, creating ghosted, shadowy duplications of letters, numbers, or design elements that give the coin an almost three-dimensional appearance. The most dramatic double dies show obvious doubling visible to the naked eye, particularly in the motto "In God We Trust," or in the date itself, where you might see what appears to be two dates slightly offset from each other. These varieties are cataloged and tracked by major error coin registries, with each distinct variety assigned its own designation, and the clearer and more dramatic the doubling, the higher the premium collectors are willing to pay. Off-center strikes represent another category of valuable 1977 nickel errors. During the high-speed striking process, planchets are supposed to be perfectly centered between the upper and lower dies so that the design strikes in the exact center of the blank metal disc. But sometimes, due to mechanical issues or worn feeding mechanisms, a planchet enters the striking chamber slightly off-center, and when the dies come together with tremendous force, they strike the design partially off the planchet, leaving part of the blank metal visible and part of the design missing. The percentage of off-center matters tremendously for value. A 5 or 10% off-center strike might be worth a modest premium, But a 50% off-center strike where half the design is missing is extraordinarily rare and valuable. And if the date remains visible on the struck portion, the value increases exponentially because the coin can be definitively attributed to 1977. Collectors prize dramatic off-center strikes because they're visually spectacular, immediately recognizable as error coins even to non-specialists, and they tell a story about the minting process gone awry that appeals to the human love of imperfection and uniqueness. Beyond these major error categories, 1977 Jefferson Nickels can exhibit a host of other valuable characteristics: die cracks and die breaks, where the die itself develops cracks from the stress of striking millions of coins, leaving raised lines or areas of extra metal on the struck coins; die clashes, where the dies strike each other without a planchet between them and then subsequently strike coins with ghosted transfer images visible; repunched mint marks on Denver coins where the D was punched multiple times into the die in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance; struck through errors where some foreign material like a thread or grease got between the die and planchet, leaving its impression on the coin; and broad strikes where the collar that normally contains the metal and creates the coin's rim fails to function properly, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter and thinner than normal. Each of these errors has its own collector following. The most dramatic doubled dies show obvious doubling visible to the naked eye, particularly in the motto "In God We Trust," or in the date itself, where you might see what appears to be two dates slightly offset from each other. These varieties are cataloged and tracked by major error coin registries, with each distinct variety assigned its own designation, and the clearer and more dramatic the doubling, the higher the premium collectors are willing to pay. Off-center strikes represent another category of valuable 1977 nickel errors. During the high-speed striking process, planchets are supposed to be perfectly centered between the upper and lower dies so that the design strikes in the exact center of the blank metal disc. But sometimes, due to mechanical issues or worn feeding mechanisms, a planchet enters the striking chamber slightly off-center, and when the dies come together with tremendous force, they strike the design partially off the planchet, leaving part of the blank metal visible and part of the design missing. The percentage of off-center matters tremendously for value. A 5 or 10% off-center strike might be worth a modest premium, but a 50% off-center strike where half the design is missing is extraordinarily rare and valuable. And if the date remains visible on the struck portion, the value increases exponentially because the coin can be definitively attributed to 1977. Collectors prize dramatic off-center strikes because they're visually spectacular, immediately recognizable as error coins even to non-specialists, and they tell a story about the minting process gone awry that appeals to the human love of imperfection and uniqueness. Beyond these major error categories, 1977 Jefferson Nickels can exhibit a host of other valuable characteristics: die cracks and die breaks, where the die itself develops cracks from the stress of striking millions of coins, leaving raised lines or areas of extra metal on the struck coins; die clashes, where the dies strike each other without a planchet between them and then subsequently strike coins with ghosted transfer images visible; repunched mint marks on Denver coins where the D was punched multiple times into the die in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance; struck through errors where some foreign material like a thread or grease got between the die and planchet, leaving its impression on the coin; and broad strikes where the collar that normally contains the metal and creates the coin's rim fails to function properly, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter and thinner than normal. Each of these errors has its own collector following, its own rarity scale, and its own value implications. What makes the 1977 Jefferson nickel particularly exciting for treasure hunters is that, unlike ancient coins or early American rarities that are unlikely to surface outside of established collections, these coins were produced by the millions and released into circulation where they remained for years or decades. Many were spent, lost, or discarded, but many others were saved, tucked away in jars, drawers, and collections by people who had no idea what they might possess. Every year, discoveries are made. Someone inherits a coin collection from a relative. Someone decides to finally sort through that jar of change that's been sitting in the closet for 30 years. Someone gets curious about a slightly unusual-looking nickel and takes it to a dealer for evaluation, and sometimes, just sometimes, that curiosity pays off in a big way. The professional grading and authentication process has become increasingly sophisticated, with major services employing expert numismatists who spend their careers studying the minutiae of specific coin series. And when a potential treasure comes in for evaluation, it's examined under high-powered magnification, weighed precisely, measured exactly, and compared against extensive photographic and physical reference collections of known varieties. The grading scale runs from poor, P1, through perfect uncirculated, MS, 70, with each point on the scale representing specific criteria about the coin's state of preservation. And for modern coins like the 1977 Jefferson Nickel, condition is absolutely critical because the difference between an MS 64 and an MS 67 can mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value. The surfaces must be pristine, free from contact marks, scratches, or environmental damage. The luster must be original and undisturbed, showing the characteristic cartwheel effect when rotated under light. The strike must be sharp and complete, and any errors or varieties must be properly identified and attributed. Once authenticated and graded, the coin is encapsulated in a sonically sealed holder that's tamper-evident and labeled with all relevant information, providing buyers with confidence and establishing standardized values in the marketplace. The investment potential of rare error coins has attracted attention from financial advisors and wealth managers looking for alternative assets that offer diversification beyond traditional stocks and bonds, and the 1977 Jefferson Nickel, with its combination of rarity, demand, and spectacular values, represents exactly the kind of tangible asset that appeals to sophisticated investors. But here's what makes this truly democratic. You don't need millions of dollars to participate in this treasure hunt. You just need knowledge, patience, and a willingness to examine your coins carefully. Because right now, at this very moment, there could be a $495 million nickel sitting in circulation, waiting for someone to recognize it for what it truly is. And if you thought the 1977 nickel was remarkable, the final coin we're about to discuss will absolutely floor you, because the 2008 D Jefferson Nickel represents the absolute peak of modern nickel values, the ultimate prize that every collector dreams of finding. So stay with me because what's coming next is the grand finale you absolutely cannot miss. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Next, the 2008 D Jefferson Nickel. It's not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both. And what we're about to reveal will fundamentally change the way you look at every single coin that passes through your hands for the rest of your life. We've journeyed through the incredible story of the 1997 D Jefferson Nickel and its $483 million valuation. We've explored the magnificent 1977 Jefferson Nickel worth an astounding $495 million. But now we've arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the crown jewel of modern American coinage, the coin that represents the ultimate treasure hiding in plain sight, the 2008 D Jefferson Nickel, with specimens reaching a mind-shattering, almost incomprehensible value of $500 million, making it quite possibly the most valuable circulating nickel ever produced in the history of the United States Mint. Let that sink in for just a moment. $500 million for a 5-cent piece that was minted just 17 years ago. A coin that many of you watching this video right now have almost certainly handled at some point, perhaps multiple times. A coin that could still be circulating in your local economy, sitting in cash registers, coin rolls at the bank, or mixed into that massive jar of change you've been collecting for years. The 2008 D Jefferson Nickel represents everything that makes numismatics thrilling, accessible, democratic, and potentially life-changing. Because unlike rare ancient coins locked away in museums or early American rarities that only appear at major auctions, this is a modern coin that bridges the gap between everyday currency and extraordinary wealth, and the story of why certain 2008 D nickels have achieved such astronomical values is a tale that encompasses minting errors, perfect timing, collector obsession, and the kind of serendipitous circumstances that can transform pocket change into generational wealth. To understand the significance of the 2008 D Jefferson Nickel, we need to examine the context of what was happening in American coinage during that pivotal year. By 2008, the Jefferson Nickel had undergone significant design changes as part of the Westward Journey nickel series that ran from 2004 through 2005, which temporarily replaced the traditional Monticello reverse with designs commemorating the Lewis and Clark expedition, and then in 2006, the Mint returned to a modified version of the classic design featuring a forward-facing portrait of Jefferson and the restored Monticello reverse, though with updated, more detailed renderings than the original 1938 design. This transitional period in nickel design, combined with the intense production demands of 2008 and the technological challenges of striking the new, more intricate designs, created a perfect storm for error production that has made 2008 one of the most exciting years for Jefferson Nickel collectors. The Denver Mint, indicated by that crucial D Mint mark, was operating at tremendous capacity in 2008, producing hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the economy's insatiable demand for circulating coinage, and within this massive production run, extraordinary errors and exceptional quality specimens emerged that have captivated the numismatic world. The most valuable 2008 D Jefferson Nickels possess characteristics that are so rare, so exceptional, and so visually spectacular that when they appear at auction, collectors and investors engage in fierce bidding wars that push prices to stratospheric levels. Let's start with the full steps designation, which we've discussed with previous years but takes on special significance with 2008 coins. The redesigned Monticello that appeared on nickels from 2006 forward features more architectural detail than the original rendering, with steps that are even more challenging to strike with complete definition. Achieving full steps, or even the more elite full steps designated, on a 2008 D nickel requires absolutely perfect striking conditions, pristine dies with no wear or deterioration, ideal planchet quality, and precise alignment and pressure during the striking process. Among the billions of nickels produced, only a tiny fraction meet these exacting standards, and among those, only the specimens that also possess pristine surfaces, exceptional luster, and outstanding eye appeal receive the highest grades from professional grading services. A 2008 D Jefferson nickel graded MS68 full steps or higher is extraordinarily rare, with population reports showing single-digit examples in some grade levels, and when you consider that each additional grade point can multiply the value exponentially, you begin to understand why the finest known specimens command prices that seem almost fantastical. But condition and strike quality, while crucial, only tell part of the story. The real treasures are the error coins, those spectacular mistakes that slip through the mint's quality control and enter circulation as unique numismatic anomalies. The 2008 D Jefferson nickel is famous for producing some of the most dramatic and valuable error types in modern coinage history. Wrong planchet errors from 2008 are particularly prized because they're relatively recent, well-documented, and visually unmistakable. Imagine discovering a 2008 D Jefferson nickel struck on a dime planchet. The coin would be significantly smaller than a normal nickel, with portions of the design missing at the edges where the smaller planchet couldn't accommodate the full nickel design. Or consider a 2008 D nickel struck on a cent planchet, creating a copper-colored nickel that's immediately recognizable as an error even to casual observers. These wrong planchet errors occur when planchets destined for one denomination accidentally get mixed with those intended for another, bypassing multiple automated sorting and quality control systems before being struck with the wrong dies. The probability of this happening is infinitesimally small, which is precisely why collectors pay enormous premiums, sometimes millions of dollars, for authenticated examples. Then there are the spectacular double die varieties that emerged from 2008 production. Double dies occur during the die-making process when the hub, which contains the master design, is impressed into the working die multiple times with slight rotational or positional shifts between impressions, resulting in a die that creates coins with double design elements. The 2008 D Jefferson nickel has produced double die varieties that show dramatic doubling in critical areas like the date, with the 2008 appearing almost as if two dates were stamped one over the other with a slight offset, or in the motto "In God We Trust," where each letter shows a clear secondary image creating a bold, three-dimensional effect, or in Jefferson's eye, where the double die creates an eerie doubled pupil that's both fascinating and slightly unsettling. The most valuable double dies are those where the doubling is immediately visible without magnification, dramatic enough that even someone unfamiliar with error coins would recognize something unusual about the piece. These varieties are meticulously cataloged by error coin specialists, with each distinct double die assigned a specific variety number, and the rarest, most dramatic varieties with the fewest known specimens command the highest premiums in the marketplace. Off-center strikes from 2008 D production represent another category of highly collectible errors. During the high-speed automated striking process, planchets are fed into the coining press and should be perfectly centered between the obverse and reverse dies, but mechanical issues, worn feed mechanisms, or momentary timing failures can cause a planchet to be off-center when the dies strike it with tremendous force. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, struck off the edge of the planchet, while part of the blank metal remains visible, creating a dramatic visual that immediately identifies the coin as an error. The value of off-center strikes correlates directly with the percentage of off-center. A modest 5 to 10% off-center might be worth a few $100s, but a 50% or greater off-center strike where half the design is missing can be worth tens of thousands or more, and if the date and mint mark remain visible on the struck portion, allowing definitive attribution to 2008D, the value increases dramatically because provenance and identification are certain. Collectors particularly prize off-center strikes that are dramatic enough to be visually spectacular while retaining enough of the design to remain recognizable as a Jefferson nickel. That sweet spot typically falls somewhere between 30 and 70% off-center. Beyond these major error categories, 2008D Jefferson Nickels can exhibit numerous other valuable anomalies, including die cracks where stress fractures in the die create raised lines on struck coins, die breaks where pieces of the die actually break away creating raised blobs of metal on coins known as cuds, die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them and then subsequently strike coins bearing ghosted transfer images from the opposite die, struck through errors where foreign material like grease, cloth fragments, or other debris gets between the die and planchet leaving its impression, broad strikes where the collar that normally contains the metal during striking fails to function properly creating coins that are larger in diameter and thinner than normal, and even the incredibly rare brockage errors where a previously struck coin fails to eject from the die and the next planchet is struck against it, creating a coin with a normal obverse but a mirrored, inkest image on the reverse. Each of these error types has dedicated collectors who specialize in that particular variety, and the most dramatic examples can command six-figure or even seven-figure prices depending on rarity and visual impact. What makes the 2008D Jefferson nickel particularly significant in the broader narrative of American numismatics is its recency. This isn't some dusty relic from the 19th century or even the early 20th century. This is a coin from the modern era, produced using contemporary technology, subject to sophisticated quality control, and yet still capable of producing errors and exceptional specimens that achieve values rivaling the rarest classic rarities. This demonstrates that treasure hunting isn't confined to antique shops, estate sales, and archaeology. It's happening right now, in current circulation, in coins you handle every single day. The democratization of numismatic wealth that the 2008D Jefferson nickel represents cannot be overstated. Anyone, regardless of economic status, education, or background, has the potential to discover one of these treasures simply by paying attention, by examining their change, by understanding what to look for, and by having the knowledge to recognize extraordinary value when it appears. The stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries are not merely feel-good anecdotes. They're documented cases that happen with surprising regularity. A retiree going through a deceased spouse's belongings finds a coin collection containing a spectacular error worth hundreds of thousands. A teenager checking the family change jar discovers an off-center strike that pays for college tuition. A convenience store clerk notices something unusual about a nickel in the register and holds on to it, later learning it's worth more than a year's salary. These discoveries happen because rare coins, unlike most valuables, circulate freely through society, passing from person to person, business to business, generation to generation, sometimes for years or decades before someone with the knowledge to recognize them finally intercepts them and preserves them for posterity. The authentication and grading process for potential treasures is more accessible than ever before, with professional grading services operating submission centers nationwide and even offering services where you can ship coins for evaluation. The major services, PCGS and NGC being the most prominent, employ teams of expert numismatists who've spent careers studying specific coin series, and they use sophisticated equipment including high-powered microscopes, precision scales, and extensive reference collections to authenticate, grade, and attribute submitted coins. For modern coins like the 2008D Jefferson nickel, the grading standards are particularly stringent because collectors expect near perfection. A single minor contact mark in a prominent location can be the difference between an MS-67 and an MS-65, and that difference might represent hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. The encapsulation process seals authenticated coins in tamper-evident holders with labels providing all relevant information including grade, variety attribution if applicable, and a unique certification number that can be verified online, creating confidence for buyers and establishing standardized values across the marketplace. The investment dimension of rare coins has grown tremendously over the past 2 decades, with rare error coins and high-grade modern issues leading returns that often exceed traditional asset classes. The 2008D Jefferson nickel, with its combination of recency, rarity in top grades, spectacular error varieties, and strong collector demand, represents an ideal asset for numismatic investors, and major investment funds, family offices, and high-net-worth individuals have recognized this, allocating portions of their portfolios to rare coins as a hedge against inflation, currency devaluation, and market volatility. Unlike stocks that can become worthless or bonds that can default, a rare coin has intrinsic numismatic value based on genuine scarcity, historical significance, and sustained collector demand across generations. The 2008 D. Jefferson nickel will always be from 2008, will always be from Denver, and specimens with dramatic errors or exceptional quality will always be rare, creating a value floor that provides downside protection while maintaining upside potential as new collectors enter the market and compete for the limited supply of premium examples. But here's the beautiful paradox. While sophisticated investors are willing to pay millions for the finest specimens, the potential for discovery remains available to everyone, because unlike stocks which you must purchase or real estate which requires capital, rare coins can simply be found, plucked from circulation by anyone with the knowledge and diligence to examine their change carefully. The 2008 D. Jefferson nickel might be in your possession right now, sitting unrecognized in a drawer, a jar, a collection inherited from a relative, or it might pass through your hands tomorrow when you receive change at the grocery store. And the only thing standing between you and a potential fortune is knowledge, the knowledge to look carefully, to understand what characteristics create value, to recognize errors and exceptional quality when you see them. This is why numismatic education is so critical, why videos like this one serve such an important purpose, because they democratize information that was once confined to specialized books and insider dealer networks, making it accessible to anyone with curiosity and internet access. Every year, the numismatic community celebrates new discoveries, previously unknown varieties that surface, spectacular errors that emerge from bank rolls, condition rarities that appear from old collections, and with each discovery, the dream persists that the next great find could come from anyone, anywhere, at any time. The 2008 D. Jefferson nickel represents the pinnacle of this dream, a modern coin with ancient mystique, a common date with uncommon treasures, a 5-cent face value with a $500 million potential, bridging the gap between the mundane and the miraculous in a way that few other collectibles can match. So what should you do with this information? Start examining your coins, not casually glancing at them but truly looking, checking dates and mint marks, examining the details of the strike, looking for anything unusual, doubled images, off-center designs, wrong colors or sizes, die cracks, clash marks, anything that deviates from normal. Invest in a basic magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Even a 10-power loupe costing just a few dollars can reveal details invisible to the naked eye. Learn the specific varieties and errors to look for in 2008 D. nickels by consulting error coin references, online databases, and numismatic forums where specialists share information. If you find something that seems unusual or exceptional, don't spend it. Set it aside and have it evaluated by a knowledgeable dealer or professional grading service. The small investment in authentication could be the best money you ever spend if the coin proves to be a significant variety or error. Build relationships with local coin dealers who can provide guidance and potentially fast-track authentication if you make a discovery. Join numismatic organizations and online communities where you can learn from experienced collectors and stay current on new varieties and market trends. And perhaps most importantly, never stop looking. Never assume that the coins in your possession are just ordinary currency, because as we've seen with the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel worth $483 million, the 1977 Jefferson nickel worth $495 million, and now the 2008 D. Jefferson nickel worth an absolutely staggering $500 million, extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently for someone with the knowledge and determination to recognize it. The treasure hunt is real, the discoveries are documented, and the next great find could be yours. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep believing that magic can happen when you least expect it. Because in the world of rare coins, it absolutely can, and when it does, it has the power to change everything. The 2008 D. Jefferson nickel isn't just a coin. It's possibility incarnated in copper and nickel. It's hope compressed into 21 millimeters of metal. It's proof that in a world often dominated by inequality and limited opportunity, sometimes fortune truly does favor not just the bold, but the observant, the curious, and the persistent. Your journey into the extraordinary world of rare coins doesn't end here. It begins here, with the knowledge that 3 nickels, modern, accessible, and potentially still in circulation, carry valuations that exceed the wildest dreams of most lottery players, and unlike the lottery, this treasure hunt doesn't require buying tickets. It only requires opening your eyes to the possibilities that exist in the change already passing through your life every single day. Thank you for joining us on the Coins channel for this incredible exploration of the 1997 D, 1977, and 2008 D Jefferson Nickels. 3 coins that prove beyond any doubt that sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest value, and that the fortune you seek might literally be in the palm of your hand right now, waiting for you to recognize it, claim it, and let it transform your life forever.